I'm being vain here, sorry.
So am I. I make sure I'm as presentable
Yeah,
before.
sometimes I just look a mess and I really don't. Oh, hi, YouTube. Oh, okay. Now you get to hear some of the silly conversations I have with Dr. Q. All right, so I'm live on Instagram, live on YouTube. Um, and let's see who comes in.
Uh,
And we'll wait for Dr. Q to refresh.
yeah, I'm refreshing it. It hasn't quite gotten there yet. I don't know why it's not looking live on the.
Hello, hello.
Hello, trying to get onto Instagram, but it doesn't want to cooperate. I'm refreshing, but it doesn't. Um,
Hi, Light Skin K. Go to the feed and then press down and refresh, and then it should pop up for live.
okay.
Hi, Wise Girls Rock.
No,
We
usually,
are waiting on Dr. Q.
yeah, it usually pops right up, but it's not. I'm refreshing, but it's not coming up.
Is this for Sickle Cell Plus too?
Yeah, it's the right.
Ooh, we already have a question. Okay, we're waiting on Dr. Q. I think
Yeah,
he's
I'm trying
having
to. I
some.
don't see it. It's not coming up.
Mm,
Uh,
I can't send you an invite.
yeah, I'm usually it comes up, but it's not coming up. Let me just. No.
Hi, Warrior. We're blood siblings. Is it on the main page, the home page? You press the home at the bottom and then
Uh,
scroll and then refresh?
yeah,
Yeah.
what I could do is I could just turn it off and try it again.
Okay.
I hate to do that though, but let me just. Yeah, that's really weird. Okay, wait, let me try this. Okay, there we go. It just came up.
Okay. We got Dr. Q on. Welcome in. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. Good afternoon. We got our very first question, and I'm pulling in Dr. Q now. There he is. Hi, Dr. Q.
Hello, finally, I'm here.
All right, Dr. Q, believe it or not, we have our very first question. Thank you, Vivi, for asking this question. It says, my bro has sickle cell. Is it important to have a specific diet? That's a good question.
Uh, I don't think it ha not a specific diet, but you do have to. You can't eat. I think you just have to eat a healthy diet. Not too much junk food, and you you do have to may have to eat a little bit more because if you have hemoglobin SS, sickle cell anemia, then your bone marrow is really busy making red cells all the time, and so that takes up a lot of energy. So some people eat a little bit more than what you might expect just because they can. They need that extra energy. But
So you need
just
extra calories because
extra
your bone
calories,
marrow
right?
is working
Right.
overtime and trying to make new red blood cells, and that exhausts a lot of the calories. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So high caloric diet and then eating healthy
Yeah, you've
would
really got
be
to
your
you
advice.
got to watch your diet, not too much junk food.
Not too much junk food. Dr. Q, you talked about in the past of a study that was done in, I think, Saudi Arabia surrounding nutrition
Oh,
and how big nutrition can be for someone living with sickle cell.
right. So that study, it's now years old, I guess, but it looked at people who had a nutritious diet and people who didn't. And it was pretty striking because people who had a very poor diet, and we're talking very poor, um, those people, their survival rate was really decreased. They really got sicker. Um, and I think the study was over a year or two, and some of the people with the poor diets actually didn't survive. So diet is really important, and it's just calories. I mean, everybody knows what a good diet is, I think. No, not too many potato chips and soda, processed foods. All those things are bad for you. Ultra processed foods have turned out to be really bad. That's the chips and all that stuff, cookies. It's ultra processed. So that means you don't have to do any digestion. It just goes right into your bloodstream. And because you get this uh, boost of calories so fast, it becomes kind of addicting. Regular food, you have to digest it and everything, and you don't get this kind of all energy from all the sugar that you're getting from ultra processed foods. So it's kind of addicting.
Yeah. This person said that their brother lives in Kenya. The healthcare system isn't the best, so he barely gets checked up. How can they manage the low energy levels at home? He gets tired so often. I'll just say to that, it's part of the disease or it's part of the disorder, being tired all the time. You have less blood cells in your system. You have less blood cells, or somebody with sickle cell has less blood cells running through their veins, literally. And then additionally, those blood cells aren't carrying oxygen as well as they should. So anemia is very, very prevalent. Him being tired all the time is common and typical and definitely something most people with sickle cell experience. Um, there isn't like a surefire way to figure out how to boost energy levels. I think it could be maybe a little bit more personal. Um, but for me, getting transfused always boosts my levels. And then if I can't get transfused, then I drink coffee, and sometimes that helps. Um, but yeah, that's a question we get a lot is how to boost low energy, but you kind of also have to remember that low energy is part of living with sickle cell. You have less blood than everybody. You have probably around half the amount of blood that everybody without sickle cell has. So you're working with a lot less. And so I think it's also important to remember that.
Yeah,
Um,
fatigue is really common in people with sickle cell.
the next question I have, my daughter has SS. Have you all heard about turmeric and trials? Have they done studies in turmeric, Dr. Q?
I'm not sure that anybody has done an actual study, you know, uh, uh, with turmeric against. some other kind of anti-inflammatory. But turmeric is good. The problem with some of these, first of all, you have to make sure that's what, look on the label and make sure that's what it is, because turmeric could be contaminated with other things. It's not regulated by the FDA or anything. The other thing is, and it's been reported that people who take a lot of turmeric, that actually can interfere with your liver function. So I think it's okay to use it, it works, but you just can't overdo it. And the studies that I read didn't really get into like how much this person was taking who had liver failure, but it sounds like they were taking like a lot more than what anybody would take for pain.
All
Oh,
right.
I'm just reading one about irons. Is there anything else like don't take iron? That's for sure. Iron supplement, you don't need iron, generally speaking. If you People with sickle cell disease can have iron deficiency, but the problem is you're anemic to begin with. If you have uh, hemoglobin SS or another one of those major sickle cell disease, so you're always anemic, and so you really have to go to and have some blood tests done to see whether your anemia is related to iron deficiency before you take iron. There's no way for your body to get rid of iron. So if you start taking iron and say most people with sickle cell occasionally get transfusions, you will become iron overloaded. I recall somebody that had thalassemia who was taking a lot of iron and actually got iron overloaded from taking too much iron, thinking that that was going to help his thalassemia. So he was on chelation, not because of so much of his transfusions, but because he was taking iron on top of transfusions.
Yeah, a lot of people think just right off the bat when they hear anemia, they think iron deficiency, and that can be the case for people who don't have sickle cell or thalassemia. And it can still be, like Dr. Q said, it can still be the case for people with sickle cell, but there is an extra precaution you have to take when it comes to that because so many people within our sickle cell community, I know have lost their life to iron overload. So it is important to keep track of your iron levels, and we're not taking iron to help with our anemia because our anemia is caused by something else. It's caused by a genetic mutation. It's not caused by the lack of iron. Now, you can have both the genetic mutation and anemia from that and anemia from low levels of iron. That can happen, but you have to get that information from your doctor. Your doctor has to tell you you have low iron levels. If you get transfusions, that's usually not the case. So it's something that we like to call out a lot because we see people lose their lives to iron overload.
Right. If you're on chronic transfusions, iron overload is very insidious. You don't have any symptoms. By the time you have symptoms of iron overload, you have major organ damage from the iron.
Okay. Um, do you guys have printable resources on the website about the importance of blood donations for sickle cell? That's a good question. We've done posts about blood donations, but we don't have a resource as of right now, but we will make note of that and, get to work on that if that's something you all need. Thanks for the for that particular question. Um, have you heard any news on the lawsuit against Oxbrita? Um, I think there are multiple lawsuits. I think it's just based off of which law agency um you are talking about, but I do believe I've seen that there's multiple.
Lawyers are
uh,
always out there to make some money.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, I don't know that the manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company was completely aware of the problem they were having with it. And when Pfizer took it over, they were, I don't know what happened, but those are the people who pulled it because they looked at one study where it was called the STAND study. They looked at it and people were not having, is that the right study? I can't remember. But
there's a
the,
couple studies that they looked
yeah,
at.
so people who were taking that were having more as much as having problems the same as the placebo or more. And there was a lot of controversy about that. But the
Ha-
problem with it was is they just pulled it without telling anybody why. They never really explained why they did it.
if there's anybody in the chat who wants to share any experiences regarding their lawsuit, please feel free to do so. But just generally speaking, um, I think that's kind of on a case by case basis. All right. My son has fat embolism syndrome on his brain and body. In 2024, he was in a coma, was a very bad time, and multiple strokes, and he recovered all. But is there any updates on gene therapy? Um, there are two approved therapies, gene therapies. One is called Casgevy and the other is called Lyfgenia. And they both have ways of kind of lessening the symptoms, significantly lessening the symptoms of sickle cell. Um, and I think both of them are through um, fetal hemoglobin induction.
Well, one is fetal hemoglobin, the case the other one adds the different kind of a hemoglobin, an anti-sickling hemoglobin.
Oh, are both not fetal hemoglobin, just different ways
No,
of doing
yeah,
of
yeah,
inducing it?
yeah.
Okay, okay. So they are available here in the US. I'm not sure. I believe one of them is available in the UK if that's where you are. Um, and if that's something you're interested in, I would speak to your sickle cell specialist and they can get you connected with you can go over your options, what's the difference between the two of them, and see if, either of the if you're fit for either of them. And then there's also clinical trials doing gene therapy as well. So there's different routes you can take to learn more about gene therapy.
It's not available everywhere because it's really complicated and there has to be a lot of infrastructure to do gene therapy. So even in the United States, where you'd think I think there's less than 100 different sites where you could get gene therapy. If you're in Massachusetts, if that's, then you're in the right
You're
place,
you're in a
definitely.
good spot. Yeah. You're in a good spot.
Talk to your physician about uh, gene therapy.
Here's a good question. Why does it seem as though health professionals are so afraid of treating SS patients? Is it fear of addiction? So many never really follow the treatment plans.
Well, I think you have to remember that sickle cell disease is really a rare disease. So when I went to medical school, which was a long, long time ago, but there was nothing about, I don't really recall anything about sickle cell disease being taught in medical school. They use sickle cell disease as an example of genetics, but I don't really recall uh, anybody making focusing on hemoglobinopathies generally, and particularly on sickle cell disease. So most physicians don't really have a background in sickle cell disease. So if they're not interested in sickle cell disease, if they're not, say, in an urban area where there are more people with sickle cell disease, they don't have any impetus to try to learn about it. So, sickle cell disease is really complicated. When I'm a pediatrician, and so I started taking care of children and young adults with sickle cell disease was back in the day when they had 10 sickle cell centers and they had sickle cell conferences every year. So I learned a lot there, but it still took me and I had, 300 or 400 patients. It still took me 2 years for sure before I kind of felt like I really knew what I was doing and I knew something about sickle cell. So if you're a physician and you've got 5 patients with sickle cell or something like that, or you don't, it's really hard to become sort of competent in taking care of people with sickle cell. It doesn't mean you can't. It just takes a lot of extra effort. And and then I think the idea about prescribing opioids and all that, that's also, because people are afraid of the pain part of sickle cell because there's no test. You can't you have to just accept the fact. If you know, once you've taken care of people with sickle cell disease, you have a different attitude about opioids and that kind of thing. But initially, you know, it could be an issue for some doctors.
Yeah, I think when you're in countries like the US or the UK, sickle cell is a rare disorder, and so therefore not too many people, physicians are well versed in diabetes, something that impacts like millions of people. And so, a lot of times people in the community ask, well, why don't they know about sickle cell? Why don't they know about sickle cell? To contextualize it, sickle cell is rare in the US. And so, and there are a whole bunch of rare diseases that, general doctors just don't know about. And, their focus, or they probably be mostly educated on what affects, the majority of people. And so it is frustrating, but then also this is where, having a sickle cell specialist or a care team becomes important within, any kind of emergency situations, or is important just within care in general, because then your provider can teach whoever's treating you or advise whoever's treating you about the care that you should be receiving. So, because sickle cell is so rare here, it is important to have a sickle cell specialist so that they can help guide that care. Um, right off the bat, I think the ER is really just a really bad place for everybody. So it's actually bigger than sickle cell. You hear a lot of people just there's a lot of mistreatment within the ER. It's just a bad place for everybody involved. So I always encourage to, if you having symptoms or if you know you're about to have a symptom, reach out to your sickle cell specialist and maybe get seen at a day hospital or a sickle cell clinic instead of going to the ER, because the ER is just bad all around for everybody involved. So it's just not a good place to treat a rare disease. You're going in to, and you're um, you have providers who know a lot about, gunshot wounds and this and that. They don't know a lot about sickle cell. And so it's the last place you want to be if you are a patient. So um, we always stress to have a provider, a sickle cell specialist advocate on your behalf if you do have to end up in the ER. If you're going to the ER, call your specialist and have them call ahead, have them share your care plan, have them share your pain plan. Um, Otherwise, yeah, people just don't know about sickle cell. Now, if you travel outside of the US to a place like Nigeria, they know a lot about sickle cell, and you have different problems there. I remember I got sick in Nigeria, and it's not that they didn't believe I had sickle cell or they didn't believe I was in pain. It was just one, either shortage of pain medication, or two, like, they use it more sparingly than here in the US, and so it's a different issue. They know about sickle cell. They get, go to a place like Jamaica, they know about sickle cell. All providers know about sickle cell because it's more common there. So that's kind of if I think a lot of times people don't ha understand that within like the Western countries, sickle cell is rare, and so therefore they providers just aren't trained on sickle cell. So it is more of an uphill battle when it comes to just knowledge of sickle cell.
I think there's also some extent of bias. People with sickle cell disease who will go to the ED. Usually, they're there for pain, and so people who work in EDs, they never see anything, or they don't usually see things that happen with people with sickle cell disease. They never see them when they're well, and they think that the only thing that people with sickle cell disease has is pain. And so they get very biased about, why is this person here again? That's pain. They were just here, 3 days ago. It's a it's a huge problem. And on top of the fact that I think there's in this country for sure, there's an inherent bias against minorities, particularly Black Americans. So that feeds into it. And in some people, it's not conscious, but that's this subconscious kind of subliminal bias that they have.
Someone said we traveled 3 hours away from my daughter's care, and we have MUSC here in Charleston. Is that North Carolina?
Yeah,
I think
I
that's
think
North
so.
Carolina.
Yeah.
But the clinic here was just on the local news for ill treatment of their patients. Now we have to travel to Charlotte.
Oh,
I'm guessing
wow.
that's far. Is that far away, Charleston from Charlotte?
I don't know. I'm bad at geography. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It sounds like it's far away.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people have to travel for sickle cell.
Yeah.
This is where I think telehealth can be a real opportunity. Um, During the pandemic, and still sometimes now, um, I'll have telehealth calls or calls like this on Zoom with my provider, and he would order labs, and then I'd go to my local lab, like Quest or LabCorp, and they would send those labs to my provider. So that could be maybe a way that you can. I'm not sure if your health system allows for that, but telehealth could help kind of bridge that gap so you're not having to travel and then maybe go in physically once every 6 months or something like that, but then the rest of your visits are through telehealth. So I think there's a real opportunity there.
Also, you should really have like a non-sickle cell doctor who's willing to partner with your sickle cell doctor so you don't have to travel so much. Someone who's willing, a lot of doctors aren't really open to suggestion by other doctors, but a doctor who says, oh, yeah, if you come in, I'll call your doctor up, we'll talk about it, I'll write a prescription, and then you can see him or her at another time if it's a long distance. it's hard. That's another kind of way to do it. Telehealth, or get someone who your primary care doctor is, who's willing to partner with a sickle cell doctor and call up and spend it's extra time. It's time is money. So doctors sometimes don't want to spend that half hour, 20 minutes or whatever talking to someone else because they don't get paid for that. So fortunately, I was in a situation that didn't really matter what I did. I got paid the same no matter what, no matter what I did.
Brits Bless said, yes, I'm from Jamaica and we have a sickle cell unit, but I think it's the only one in the entire country. Yeah, it's at CARE, right? I got to visit there probably about 6 years, 5, 6 years ago. And I met some of the providers there. It's in Kingston with the university. How old am I? Are you asking how old I am? Guess. Guess how old I am. Knowing that I have sickle cell, though. Knowing that I
Right.
have sickle cell. Factor that in.
She's older than 19, I'll tell you
Oh,
that.
okay. Um, we can't help it. We be in a lot of pain yet. Oh, Charleston, South Carolina. We got the wrong state. Dr. Q is South Carolina, not North Carolina. I'm in Baton Rouge, and it only has one doctor here to help with sickle cell. I heard healthcare in Louisiana in general is really, really bad. But hopefully as long as you have that one person, or as long as you have that provider in your corner, that makes all the difference. Um, okay, next question. You talked about transfusion. Is it normal to schedule them? My bro only gets them when he has an attack and is admitted. So that's a good question. Chronic transfusion can be part of your care plan. If you have, if you have that established within the system that you're in. There are some sickle cell patients who do get transfused on a regular basis. So they'll get transfused on a monthly basis, but it is based off of your brother's health. And so that conversation needs to be had with him and his provider. My sister, who also has sickle cell, gets apheresis, which is, they're taking out blood and putting in blood at the same time. She gets that done once a month. And the reason she gets that done is because if she doesn't, she ends up in the hospital a lot. I don't get that done. I don't get a monthly transfusion. I get it as needed. Usually, the only time I get transfused is when I'm tr having a big trip, like leaving the US. I'll get transfused just to be on the safe side. And then the second reason is, if I'm in the hospital and my hemoglobin has dipped. So those are the only two reasons why I get transfused. But someone like my sister, transfusion helps her stay out of the hospital. So you kind of have to weigh out, and see what your sickle cell looks like to determine whether you should get transfused on a regular basis or not. I would love to be transfused on a regular basis. Like I have kind of because I'm like addicted to feeling good, and like I just every time I get transfused, like I swear I can skip, hop, jump, do whatever I want to do. Like, going up a flight of stairs is no problem at all. Like it's a really different life for me. I can think clearly. My thought processes are faster. Just everything is life is better. It's Technicolor. Um, but there is a risk with getting transfused, and we talked a little bit about that. That's iron overload, right? And so iron builds up. Each transfusion you get, iron builds up. And so you have to, if I decide I want to get transfused on a regular basis, that means I'm agreeing to take another medication to get rid of the iron that's building up from my transfusion. So it's like, do I want to take another new medication because I'm gonna get transfused all the time, or should I just kind of manage how I am right now? And so it's a lot to talk about. Dr. Q, what do you think about all of it?
I think if you're getting hospitalized more than once a month, and usually when people come into the hospital for a pain episode, they're there for 5, 7 days, maybe a little bit more, then I think probably for that individual, probably chronic transfusions is an alternative just to keep you out of the hospital and have you feel better. Um, so but like Cassandra says, the issue is chelation. Most hospitals do not have exchange transfusion programs. It takes a lot of infrastructure. You have to have somebody who knows about exchange transfusions, like a doctor who's in charge of the apheresis unit. Um, you, and then you have to have nurses, machines. It's pretty intense in terms of just going in and getting a IV um, for a blood transfusion. You also have really good venous access, so you might need a port or something like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of your just your day-to-day life and your overall well-being, getting blood transfusions on a regular basis is not a bad thing. There is one issue with blood transfusions besides the iron and all that. People with sickle cell disease can be missing very common proteins on the outside of their red blood cells. So you have to have something that's called phenotypically or genotypically matched blood for an array of these antigens. You have to know what your uh, uh, antigens are on your red blood cells, which can be done in a blood bank, and then they have to find blood that's compatible with you. If they don't, you can make antibodies against very common antigens, these proteins, and some people end up not being able to be transfused because they can't find antigen negative blood for them. And
Yeah.
so the more if you're missing a one of these antigens or proteins that's common to everybody has it, but you don't, then if you make antibodies against that, it's really hard to get blood for a transfusion. So I bring this young man up, but I had a patient who could only get blood from the rare donor unit in New York. And there was in Florida, and I think it was like South Carolina, there were like two donors that didn't have this really common antigen, and they were the only people in the country that we knew about who would they would go and donate blood just for him when they went to the blood bank. So that's an extreme case, but having antigens and having a hard time finding blood is common for people with sickle cell. If they're
Yeah.
not if they don't get the the blood that's been typed just for them.
Yeah, so there's a lot to consider. I know there, in Africa, for example, um, in Ghana or in Nigeria, people have to find the blood themselves a lot of times. And so there isn't necessarily a blood bank to pull from, and you kind of you're very, very reliant on donations of people around, and you kind of have to campaign for blood donations. So um, that also can be hard as well. So there's a lot to think about when you're thinking about blood transfusions. It's not as straightforward.
And the safest blood transfusions are not what people call directed donors. You don't call up your uncle or your family and say, "Who wants to donate blood for me?" Um, the blood in America in this country is very heavily regulated. Everybody's tested for um, hepatitis and all other transmissible diseases before before they donate blood or they're as they're donating. And then people who can donate, many people just don't, they like to donate. They feel like they're really, it's something they can give to the community. And those people, their blood is very, very safe. If you decide you want a directed donation from a particular person in your family, then you have to find a person who has your same blood type, who's compatible for these minor blood antigens, and then you have to make sure that they don't have some transmissible disease. I'm trying to think that there was a case. I don't remember if I read about it or it happened in where I work, but a case where a directed donor had hepatitis C, and for some reason he hadn't been that wasn't part of the test, and so he was donating for a relative who had sickle cell who ended up having hepatitis C because they weren't testing the directed donor's blood.
Yeah.
So people don't want to tell, if it's your uncle or a relative, they don't want to tell people, oh, I have this or that that could be transmitted through transfusions. They want to, it's a big deal. So
Yeah.
directed transfusions are not terrible, but it's better to just get to go to the blood bank and get a unit that's
Yeah.
from a donor who doesn't get paid, and the unit has been tested for everything, and they make sure that it's for you. And I think one thing you should ask if you're getting transfused with sickle cell disease, is this a phenotype or genotype unit just for me? So they have to check you to see what your uh, antibodies are or antigens are, and then find another person who can donate without giving you what's called alloimmunization, or you making antibodies against blood. So if they don't do that, then you're taking a risk. And if you get enough antibodies, then you can't be transfused. They can't find units for you.
Yeah, it's harder to find blood.
It's complicated.
So hopefully that answers your question. But if your brother's doing well, it sounds like he does well for the most part. He's just mostly anemic. He may not need it. But the conversation is best with his provider and him, since we don't really know what his sickle cell's like. Hydroxyurea could also be an option for your brother as well, if it's available. I think you said you're in Kenya, or this person is in Kenya. So um, hydroxyurea could potentially be another option. And I take hydroxyurea. Um, are you a sickle cell SS or SC? I'm SS. I have sickle cell SS. Me and my sister have SS. Um, my daughter is a carrier. Trying to find it. Is there anything that I need to bear in mind? Do you know? Info online is conflicting. I'd be interested in hearing what info you're finding conflicting, so we can set the record straight. Um, but is there anything that I need to bear in mind for a carrier? You probably already know that, if a carrier and another carrier get together, they can, and your daughter's of age, right? She could potentially have a child with sickle cell disease. So that's the biggest call out that we have for those who are carriers or those who have sickle cell trait. Um, There are, under some extreme circumstances, there are some complications that individuals with sickle cell trait can have. That would be, in low oxygen situations and extreme heat, extreme or dehydration. There's a complication called rhabdomyolysis, which is a muscle breakdown for individuals with sickle cell trait. You see this a lot in athletes, and you see it sometimes within like the army. And so screening within the army became universal due to that, or one of the reasons. What was, for individuals with sickle cell trait. And then there is a very rare but aggressive kidney cancer that's associated with sickle cell trait, um, called renal medullary carcinoma. And I just like to share it. I don't want to scare people. I don't ever want to scare people. But it's just good to know, that some of the symptoms of that is urine in your blood, blood in your urine. I have Friday brain. See, this is why I love having blood transfusions, because then, that sentence would come out so much more eloquently. Anyway, blood in your urine is a good indicator that that's something to get checked out. People with sickle cell trait need to drink water just as much as somebody with sickle cell. And, you know, I think there are some advocates, trade advocates out there that would say, know your kidney labs and get your labs tested for your kidneys just to make sure kidney function is good within sickle cell trait. There was a study, I believe by 23andMe, which showed that there's a higher risk, and it's just one study. There's not a lot of research surrounding sickle cell trait, so take this with all of that in mind. But there's a study that showed that people with sickle cell trait could have a higher risk of blood clots and pulmonary embolism. I'm not sure how common that is, though. So it's not that most people with sickle cell trait are live asymptomatically, and don't typically experience um, complications, but it's not saying that they can't happen either. So I think as long as you know like what some of the triggers are for trait, and you are, drinking lots of water and keeping up with your kidney health, I think you should be good. Dr. Q, anything to add to that at all?
Well, the clotting problem is usually when you're having surgery. So if you're in the hospital and you're having surgery, you're for the time you're having the surgery, you're not moving around, and then you're in bed for a long time. You may not be drinking, whatever. So that's the time that there actually could be an issue. Not that it's not common, but that's a situation where you might think about that. The other thing is that there's there are a lot of hemoglobin variants, different kinds of, there's hundreds of different kinds of hemoglobin. And some of those, when they're paired with S, create a problem like sickle cell anemia. So the most common one is someone who has S trait and someone who has C trait. If you have C trait in newborn screening, depending on where you are, they may just kind of blow that off. Oh, C trait, that's nothing, that's not. But if you have if you have S and your partner has C, then you have a probability of having a child with SC. There's a lot. So one of the things that kind of weird, but if you're when you're older and you're planning on you have a partner or you're planning on getting married or whatever, that your partner at some point should be tested just to be sure they don't have some uh, hemoglobinopathy gene that could cause problems with your offspring. So that's an issue. Not that I think, knowledge is power. So the more you know what to expect and you're prepared for whatever comes up. But there are a lot of not a lot. There are some hemoglobin gene mutations that are relatively common that can cause problems other than someone who has a S trait. They could have C trait, they could have some other kind of trait. Uncommon, but you don't want to get a surprise.
This person says their son has SO Arab sickle cell disease, and that's exactly what
Right.
Dr. Q
That's
was saying
exactly
is sickle cell can pair with another mutation and still cause sickle cell disease. So um, SO Arab is very rare. It's, I think that the most common type of sickle cell is SS and then SC. Then comes the sickle beta thals. So sickle beta plus and sickle beta zero. So those are the three or four types of most common sickle cell diseases. And then you have other variations of sickle cell diseases like SO Arab, SD,
Los
and
Angeles, D
as
Los
Los
Angeles as
Angeles and
well. Yeah.
all the above. So yeah, sickle cell is pretty complex when it comes to just there's the most common ones and then there are more rare types of sickle cell. Do you know are there any characteristics particularly about SO Arab?
They can be as they can have the same symptoms as somebody with sickle cell, right, SS or S.
SS?
Yeah, that can be a bad disease. But again, just like you and your sister, different, you can never predict what in a child, you can never predict what's going to happen to them in the future. Some people, for whatever reasons, and nobody knows for sure, people, siblings, and people with exactly the same diagnosis can have completely different um, course of their disease with sickle cell.
This is a question we haven't gotten often. I hear that some people who have sickle cell trait can have crisis. Can it be the same with people who have the variants like AC or AO Arab?
I have not heard that. And people with um, sickle cell trait, um, there was just an article, you can have problems, but people with sickle cell trait do not have pain episodes like people with sickle cell disease. So if you have sickle cell trait and you have some kind of pain episode, it you need to have that checked out. That's not a sickle cell pain episode. That could be something else. Um, Dr. DeBon and I think it was Dr. DeBon and a group of people looked at sickle cell trait and they could not find any um, articles or episodes of people who had sickle cell trait who actually had a sickle cell pain crisis.
Cassie, can we get more content on the different types of sickle cell that is not common knowledge in the community? I mean, you made a video before, but I'd love to learn more. Yeah, let me write it down. We, Dr. Q, we need to make a video on the different types of sickle cell and maybe what the research that is currently available. Although
Yeah.
research isn't, what is research like for, maybe the more rare types of sickle cell that's it's not as
They're rare. I mean, sickle cell, like we were talking about, sickle cell disease is rare. And then the people who have sickle cell with a rare variant are even more rare. So I'm trying to think, I had 300 plus patients, and I'm trying to think, I probably had a couple over the years I probably had a couple of patients who had S with with a variant who that was caused problems with them.
Yeah.
In California, we have something called, it's a it's not, it's SE. And E is a common variant in Southeast Asians. And so hemoglobin SE is not super common, but it does happen in California. And those people have no symptoms at all. They're they when they get older, they can have symptoms like when they're in their 20s, but as children, they don't really have any symptoms.
I'm reading a comment. It says Brooklyn, I've had 17 surgeries in 1 year and over 20 blood transfusions during that time. Is that sickle cell related, the 17 surgeries? Seems like an awful lot.
Yeah.
Um,
But even people without sickle cell, if you get a lot of transfusions, you can have iron overload. So that's always an issue.
Iron overload is just a issue for those who get transfused often,
Right.
not just a sickle cell issue.
Right.
It's a
So,
thalassemia issue too.
right. It's a big issue for thalassemia because they have people with thalassemia major have to get transfused every single month or maybe even every 3 weeks. And so they get iron overloaded as very young children. And then they have to start taking chelators.
Okay. Are there hello, we are a youth-led sickle cell organization. Do you have any tips? What do you want to know? I think that what you're doing is awesome. Um, Let me see if I can find that. Here you go. And then another question, we recently hosted a blood drive for people living with sickle cell. Are there any other ways youth-led organizations can help? Any advice for youth-led organizations? I think blood drives are amazing. They are
Right.
amazing. That is the way you can help, honestly. What else do you think, Dr. Q?
I think you can help by if there's a sickle cell community-based organization for sickle cell disease. They frequently have events and they need help setting things up. Um, and so if you I guess you'd have to go online to find out if there are any sickle cell organizations near you and then volunteer. Say, we're here to help you out. If you're going to have a fair, a health fair, or something like that, we'll help with that. Um, that kind of thing.
Where are you located? If you're in California, we sure could use your help
Yeah.
in the Bay Area.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, most community-based organizations need help from the community, basically.
Yeah, also, if you're a youth-based organization, what something we've noticed is that people within that age range are not as activated in learning or advocating about sickle cell. So I think just the fact that you are doing that is already so amazing, but pulling in people your age, um, we actually have a survey that we're putting out right now. It's a global survey, and we find that more people within that age range don't engage as much with sickle cell. And I will be the first to say that was me too. I did not, outside of the hospital, outside of clinic appointments, I just minded my business when it came to sickle cell. That had nothing to do with me. Um, and then I think after a certain point, like after college, I was like, okay, maybe I should get a little bit more serious about having sickle cell and understanding sickle cell and all of that. So I think everybody has their time where they get activated about their health. And when you're young, you just want to have fun. And I definitely wasn't mature enough to activate at a younger age. I was just trying to be as low key and as normal as possible. So I think the work that you're doing is amazing.
Yeah.
Keep it up. All right, let's see here. Britt says health fairs do outreach to educate the public. Absolutely. Um, Brooklyn said I had so much pain as a kid, and the doctors would say you can't have pain with trait. Now they say I have sickle cell. That's usually what
That
happens. That is usually what happens is you get misdiagnosed. So people who have trait that are having pain crisis, double check to make sure you aren't
right.
misdiagnosed.
Yep.
Yeah. How does that happen though? How can you get
Well, you could
misdiagnosed?
have you could have sickle cell with thalassemia and have a very low level of hemoglobin A and be diagnosed with S beta thalassemia, or you could be diagnosed with thalassemia, or you could be diagnosed with trait, but ha actually don't have normal A, you have thalassemia, and that can interact and cause a problem. Or you could have even, like we were just talking about, you could have a variant of hemoglobin that's not picked up or ignored when newborn screening, and then you actually do have a hemoglobinopathy, but nobody's told you that that's what you have. And it could even be reported, but they might, in the report, it might say, you have SD Los Angeles, you do not have sickle cell disease. And then your parents think, oh, our kid doesn't, thank goodness our kid has trait instead of sickle cell disease. But actually, that is a variant of sickle cell disease. Someone says, I have thalassemia, they tell me.
Sorry?
So if you have S beta zero thalassemia, you're the same as someone who has SS. If you have S beta plus thalassemia, your possible symptoms are related to what that S beta plus is. Plus just means you make some A. It doesn't tell you how much A, it just says you have some. And I've mentioned this before, but I had a patient where they thought the child had S beta zero, but she really had S with a very low level of A. She had thalassemia, but it wasn't zero. There was so little A that it was undetectable or missed in her newborn screening.
Any advice on what to do when hydroxycarbamide keeps dropping blood cells and frequent low hemoglobin? And hydroxycarbamide, are you in the UK? I think that's what they call hydroxyurea in the
Yeah,
UK.
that's what they call hydroxyurea. Well, it depends, what you want to have, you want to take the highest dose possible without having any hematological effects. So if you are, it depends on what your dose is. Even a lower dose of hydroxyurea can be beneficial. So some people in other countries where they don't have the ability to do the blood tests all the time, they'll give children like what's 10 milligrams per kilogram or 20, because having side effects of that is unusual. But any level of hydroxyurea is better than none. And then the other thing is if you consistently have low hemoglobin at a certain level hydroxyurea, what you need to do is just back off to find out what is the highest level of hydroxyurea that I can take without having those the low hemoglobin. Um, and it's something you need to talk with your hematologist about, because when that happens, then it becomes more complicated to give you hydroxyurea, and you have to figure, you have to work with your physician to figure out what's the best thing for me.
Good question. Um, and also with hydroxyurea, that's happened to me. Taking hydroxyurea, my blood counts dropped, and so dosing is very, very important with hydroxyurea. And you might get started on one particular dose, and they may change your dose to something else because of that. And so it's kind of like a work through in which you kind of just have to find your new best dose for hydroxyurea. So I think when I very first started on hydroxyurea, I was taking 3 capsules, and now I take like back and forth one day, two the next day, one the day after. So it's like 1 2 1 2 1 2. And if I take two each day, it just my counts go out of whack. So it really has to be that 1 2 1 2 1 2. So dosing is very, very, very important with hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea never really boosted my hemoglobin. Um, I think my baseline is like around 7, 8, and it still is on hydroxyurea. And that happens sometimes. The reason I take hydroxyurea is to preserve my organs, right? To lessen the damage that's happening to my organs. So that's why. Dr. Russell Ware, I was in a seminar with him, and he says it lowers your mortality. And I was like, that's all I need. That's all I needed to hear. That's all I needed to hear was like it lessens your mortality. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm sold. I'm sold. So that's kind of why I take hydroxyurea, not necessarily for the benefit of less pain, not necessarily for the benefit of like raising my hemoglobin, although it would be nice. But rather like, the organ protection. That's why that was the sell for me. Um, let's see what question we have next here. I see. I was just discharged on Monday after my first hospitalization in 6 years. This person has sickle beta plus.
Hmm.
And on day 3 of recovery, experiencing excessive sweating, probably from Dilaudid, the best way to combat. Ooh, okay. It sounds like they didn't taper you off of the
Right,
medications, and
right.
you're going through a withdrawal. That's not fun at
No.
all.
No, if you've been on opioids for a week or whatever more, you need to work with your doctor to get so that they give you a schedule to slowly decrease your opioids. You can't go cold turkey. You can't just walk out of the hospital and say, I'm okay, I'm all better. I've just, get on with my life. You have to taper your opioids, or you will get really, really sick. Just like that. You'll start sweating, you'll get really nervous. And what you have to do with that, you have to talk to your primary care physician, whoever did that, and ask if do I need to start like taking a lower dose of opioids and then maybe in a week or so taper off um, from opioids.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave the hospital without having a plan
Yeah.
on coming off of your opioids because it's very reckless of the hospital to send you home and then you're sweating and you're having withdrawals. That's not having withdrawals can cause you to go back to the hospital and can trigger sickle cell. So
Right.
it's very irresponsible to not have some sort of plan to taper off of those medications. And if you find yourself in the hospital, I know it's been 6 years, that's amazing. That's an amazing stretch. Um, but keep in the back of your mind, if you're receiving, those opioids, there needs to be a plan to taper off of those opioids. Some of it may be sending you home with additional opioids so that you can taper off of it. You can't just quit cold turkey, because then that'll send you into a withdrawal, and that's
Well,
not
and
fun
it
at
can
all.
reactivate your pain episode as well. So,
Yeah. So, um, keep that in mind. I remember one time I just stopped taking medication. It was after my hip replacement. I was like, oh, I don't need these anymore. And I just stopped taking it. And, a night or two after, I woke up in cold sweat, like kind of shaking. I feel like I had like this restless. It's the feeling of like just being so uncomfortable in your body. It's not like necessarily pain, but it's just like you don't feel comfortable in your body at all, at least for me. And, I was sweating and I couldn't sit still. I was like, my leg was was twitching and all of that stuff. And I didn't even know I was having a withdrawal. And then I didn't even know that um, I would withdraw. I was like, look at me being a good patient. Like, I just got a hip replacement. I don't need these meds anymore. Let's just put them away. No more. And, I was like patting myself on the back, like, good job. You don't, and that's just not, you have to cut your dose in half and like keep cutting your dose in half and tapering off. That's the best way to do that. So I thought I was doing good by just stopping the day of, but you really can't do that. Um, any other questions? Is there any questions that I might have not have seen that I didn't answer? Oh, here's one. Do you treat sickle cell beta thalassemia differently? It depends on what type of sickle beta thalassemia you have. Um, there's one that's is it it's called either zero or plus or major and minor. Is that what it is? And I think I don't know if they still use major and minor, Dr. Q? Or is
yeah,
it
I
zero
think
and
they do.
plus?
Yeah. And
Okay.
minor is plus, beta thal plus, and major is beta thal zero. That means you don't make any normal hemoglobin on one of your genes.
So, if you have beta thalassemia zero, then your presentation of sickle cell is closer to SS, which would be considered quote unquote the severe type. Um, and then beta plus, it can be a variation of what your severity could be. So, would they be treated technically differently,
But beta
Dr.
plus,
Q?
I didn't treat them differently until they were over 5 or so. So I
Okay.
treated them as though they had sickle cell disease until they were around 5 or I can't, some older age like that. And then talking to the parents decided like the big thing was penicillin. So you don't, you're 5, you don't really need to be on penicillin anymore. You have beta plus thalassemia, etc. But I think that's the thing you really need to talk with your provider about, like, and expectantly, like what's going to happen, down the road. Yeah, what medications do you think I need to take and all this kind of thing. But usually with depending, again, the plus part is variable. So some people with beta plus have, I've mentioned this before, but I had a patient with beta plus thalassemia, and he had bilateral avascular necrosis by the time he was 10. So even though he had this, less severe type of sickle cell disease for him, it was not less severe. And I don't recall if he did, I don't recall that he had pain episodes besides his hip problems, but he was that's an unusual case, but it just goes to show that you can have problems with S beta plus thal because the plus is different. It could be, 2% hemoglobin A or 20% hemoglobin A.
Which
So,
is a difference, which is a
yeah.
huge difference. All right, I'm going to take the opportunity to share a little bit about the global survey that we're putting out.
Oh,
If you
yeah,
haven't
great.
already, please go to our bio and take the survey. This is a survey by the community for the community. You know how some of y'all ask questions and we don't have the answer to them because there's like no research surrounding them? This is a survey to help provide insights on some of those questions. And so a lot of times within research, if you see a survey, it's usually driven by a researcher and they have a particular goal that they're trying to achieve. And sometimes it's not aligned with the community. And so what's different about this particular survey is it's from the community, it's our priorities, it's providing the answers to our questions. So I would love, love, love if you all could go to our bio and take the survey. Also, what's different about this survey is it's not limited to any countries, and it's available in 6 different languages. We tried to make sure as many people are included as possible. So it's in Arabic, it's in Hindi, it is in Portuguese, it is in French, it's in Spanish, and it's in English. So we worked really, really hard on this. This survey will we'll take the data, we'll share it directly with you so that you can use some of this data to explain sickle cell to your parents, to your teachers, to your employers. And it'll be very, very useful. And we hope to kind of drive change with this data. So we have we're doing like a race of the countries, right? So we want as many countries represented as possible. I'm gonna share that there is a country in the lead right now. It's US, and you guys, y'all can't let the US win.
No,
Sickle cell is a rare disease in the US. You cannot let the US win or be winning right now. So in first place is the US. Second place is I want to say like the UK and Canada. Y'all cannot let these countries win when you have a country like Nigeria who has millions of people with sickle cell. So I would love it if you all could take some time. The survey takes around 15 minutes. You get entered into a raffle immediately. The early we do weekly raffles, so the we'll do a raffle today. We're raffling off $100 gift cards, $50 gift cards, and $35 gift cards, and we're raffling off the gear, not this gear that I'm wearing, but there's gear that says fighting sickle cell is in my blood. And then we also have another sweatshirt that says handle with care. And that sweatshirt is designed like when you're having one of those days where you're not feeling well, you can just put on that sweatshirt to signal to everybody, hey, leave me alone, or like be very, very nice to me today because we need it. Even if you're in the US, please take the survey. Please take the survey because we'll also do like state by state comparisons as well. So even if you're in the US, please take the survey. And that's my little pitch for y'all. Please, what's different about this is coming from the community. So this is us creating this survey to answer our questions. And so it's completely anonymous, and you can opt in at the end to be part of the giveaway. You like the slogan, fighting sickle cells in my blood. Thank you. Yeah, I like it too. We created it years and years ago, and we haven't, people always ask where to get it, and we haven't figured out how to set up shop, but we wanted to bring them out for this survey. So, um, yeah, like I said, there will be weekly raffles for the fighting sickle cells in my blood. And yeah,
I th it's really important as well because pharmaceutical companies, they want, in spite of whatever you think about them, they do want to make therapies for sickle cell disease that patients want. So if they're, it's really important to do this survey to give people outside of the sickle cell community your what's important to you, because people outside of the sickle cell community don't really know. They have no idea. Um, so it's really important to do this survey because it's global, and it's I don't know if there's ever been a survey like this before, actually.
yeah, that usually surveys are restricted to specific countries, and so we're broadening it so that
Right.
nobody gets excluded. You all can represent sickle cell within your respective country, and then we'll take that data and share that back with you. The
Yeah.
sickle cell in Jamaica looks like this, or sickle
Yeah.
cell in the UK looks like this, and then
Right.
oh, sickle cell within Jamaica versus the UK, and what are the differences? And so there's a lot we can do with this, but we do need your voices. So if you could take the time to do that survey, I would be forever grateful.
And
I
make
do,
sure you tell your friends about it.
yes,
If
and
you
share
make
it,
it, tell
please.
you were in a sickle cell community, tell people how to take that survey. The more
Yeah.
people that take it, the more representative it will be.
Yeah, the stronger that data gets for sure. Um, I will take another question and then we'll close out. I think I saw some questions. Some Britt, you said you're in the US but from Jamaica, so you can't help them win.
I
Dang.
saw
But you can
that.
represent your US state. Okay. I see here. Ooh, okay, you guys got some questions while I was on my little rant here. All right. Um, I have SS and I am usually hospitalized every 3 to 6 months, mostly only because of chest infection. Any advice on how to minimize these infections?
Well, do you really have infections? Acute chest syndrome, which is unique to sickle cell disease, on a chest x-ray looks exactly like pneumonia. You can't, if somebody comes into the hospital and they have sickle cell disease and they have chest pain and they have what's called an infiltrate on their chest x-ray, that could be an area of sickling. Usually it progresses and gets worse, but it can, and a mild chest infection can lead to acute chest syndrome. So if you have a sickle cell provider, or if you're near a sickle cell center, you need to figure out whether you're really having infections or are you having recurring episodes of acute chest syndrome. I don't know how often this is, but in my practice, this is only my opinion, doesn't uh, uh, go out beyond me. But in my opinion, if I had a patient who was getting acute chest syndrome on a regular basis, they would be on chronic transfusions to figure out how we could help that person not have those problems. And the first thing would be uh, hydroxyurea or some uh, medication that would be beneficial for that person. But having acute chest syndrome frequently or repetitively is it's not, it probably is not an infection. It's acute chest syndrome. Infections can lead to acute chest syndrome, but usually with sickle cell, it's not an infection. You just have acute just syndromes. You have a sickle cell kind of crisis in your lungs. And it causes lung damage. So it could be really serious.
Where's the link? I'll put the link here. It's in our bio, the link to the survey, but I can also put it here. Um, Thank you so much. SC101 dot link slash our voice. Hopefully that hopefully that works. If it doesn't work, it's either in our stories or in our bio. Um, Let me pin that here. And then, oh, you guys, how am I supposed to know what question are to wrap out with? Um, do you think the holistic way is better than meds or both?
Both. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you have something like sickle cell disease, you have to use um, scientifically based therapy number one, because peer-reviewed articles, people try different things to help people with sickle cell disease, but if it's published, that means somebody outside of the study looked at the study to make sure that it was a good study, that there were enough patients in the study to make it statistically significant, and then a journal has to publish it. So those kinds of things, scientific, you should be following that. And the holistic thing is, to me, it's just healthy living. You
Yeah.
drink a lot of water, you get exercise, you have a good diet, you take whatever medications you should be taking for for whatever. It may not just be for sickle cell disease, but you may have some other issue going on. So it's really just like the holistic person. You have to not only, it's kind of like you have to be doing things that's good for your sickle cell disease, but also doing things that's good for you, like exercising, having a good diet, that kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of times people pit one against the other, and I don't think that's right. It's not either or, it's both. You really gotta take meds and drink your green smoothies. Both of them. Both.
Don't forget the
And
smoothies.
do yoga
Yeah,
and visit your hematologist
yeah.
every 3 months. You have to do all of that to get the best outcome for sickle cell. And mental health is part of it too. So all of it is you got to do all of it. All right, Dr. Key, you want to wrap us up?
Yes. Well, thank everybody that joined us today. And I'm a retired pediatrician. I'm not a hematologist, although I did take care of people with sickle cell disease for a couple of decades. Um, and what I'm talking about here is stuff that's just in my brain. I'm not like looking at articles on the side to make sure what I'm saying is correct. So some of the things I say other doctors would not agree with, or it may even, I make a mistake and I'm misquoting the literature sometimes. So this is basically for education. It's not to tell you what medication to take or what to do. This is to give you knowledge so you can make decisions and maybe even go to your provider and talk about something that we've talked about here, which they may not agree with, which is, fine. Doctors don't always agree with each other. So that's my little spiel. We're here for education only, not to treat people or give you you know, medical advice, because we don't know who you are, we don't know your history, we don't know anything about you. So the person that knows the most about you is your provider, your primary provider, and that's the person you should be talking to. and taking
Yeah.
advice from, not necessarily from me.
Yes, but you can say Dr. Q said this. Is
Yeah,
it
right.
true to your provider, right? And
Right.
you know, get to the
Yeah,
bottom
don't
of
give
it
him my
yourself.
email address though.
No, we don't want any hate mail or anything. No. Um, well, thank you all so much for joining us this Friday. Please, if you can, go ahead and take the survey. We
Yes.
will be grateful for your input, and you know it'll help make this data stronger, and it's going to be something that we can be proud of as a community and that is actually representative of us. So please take the survey and hopefully you win. Fingers crossed, hopefully you win one of the raffles. Hopefully you get either the $100 gift card or the shirt. Hopefully you get one of those.
And tell your
Um,
friends with sickle cell to take the survey as well. That's the
Tell your
way it's
friend to
gonna,
tell a friend to tell a friend
yeah,
to tell a
tell a
friend.
friend because you can only reach so many people this way, but the people you reach can reach even more people. It's real, this is a really important survey.
Yeah. Hi, Stanley. We're getting ready to leave. I'm getting ready to say bye. Um, Drink your water. You want a sweater? I hope you get one. I hope. Let me know if you don't get one, Brits. Okay, let me know. Just send me a message. Can you buy the shirts? No, you cannot buy the shirts. That's the thing. You can't buy it. You can only win it. But maybe in the future. Maybe in the future. Um, Please, someone send me the link. The link is pinned to the chat right there. But it's also in our bio and it should be in our stories too. You can see the list of countries who've already participated. Got about 12 countries participated. But we need participation from everybody around the world to really understand sickle cell on that global basis. So, all right, drink your water. Look, I'm almost done with my water for the day. This is just today, and it's 11:42 in the morning for me. So I think I'm doing pretty good. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend, and we
Bye-bye.
will see you next time. Bye. Okay. And